Akira.
Have you any hobbies?
My hobbies are fast cars and fast women.
Hobbies are healthy. They teach you things.
Are you ready?
Sign everybody up. It's Monday night. You know what that means. It's time for Around the UFL. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, do we got a fun week for you. We got the panel. A little slim now, but we got more on the way, and we got a special guest. But before we jump into that, here's a couple things before I announce everybody. You know, I'm back in the host seat. We gave you the fun no shill time at the beginning of the episodes before, but not anymore. Here's what you need to do. Subscribe, click the bell. It builds morale. It also lets you know when we go live. Make sure you follow us at Around the UFL. And here's a big one. This one's free. It costs you nothing, but it goes a long way. Like the video. Like it or dislike it. Either one helps us. Now let's go around the panel. My man, James Larson, continuing his tour across the United States. Almost national. Almost getting there. Couple markets left. How you doing today, my friend?
Hey, I'm just glad I'm back home. Glad I got here without too much chaos. So a little spent from the weekend, but hey, Birmingham, man, I got to say, it's one of my favorite cities I've been to yet. It is quite the place.
Sign you up. And we were talking earlier, you got the barbecue, but I'll tell you, you need to go back down there because you missed out on the hot chicken, either Eugene's or Hattie B's, one or the other. Either will suffice. I'm a Eugene's guy.
My schedule was so crazy. I only went out to eat once, and my cousins wanted to take me to a barbecue place. But next time I'm down there, I 100% am going to Eugene's, no doubt.
Sign you up. Well, now that we are done with the unbiased folks on the show, let's move on over to the guys that are probably feeling pretty good right about now. Jake, how are you feeling? I mean, big win, big week.
It feels like the next 3 weeks are going to be just a little bit of a speed bump preparation for the main course. So yeah, feeling good. Nothing can hurt me right now.
Hell yeah. And Luke, my man, you got to be feeling good right about now. People call us biased, but you know what? It's not bragging if it's true. That's what I say. I'm not even a Stallions fan, and I'm saying it. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It feels good to be undefeated, and it feels good to have a W against the Battle Pigeons. And it feels good to see their coach and fans crying online about various things that didn't go their way and finding more things to get worked up into a frenzy about. So just another day in the life.
Like I said, it's not bragging if it's true. We'll get into, we got a lot to talk about. We got power rankings this week. We got a special guest. Like I said, I teed this a little bit earlier, but former assistant coach for the Maulers, who should be in this league right now, a man, Jarren Horton. He's going to be joining the show a little bit later. We have some discussions kind of teed up for that. I figure we'll change things up a little bit this week. We'll go into the power rankings. We can use that as an opportunity to recap the games. But before I pull them up, is there any, I'm sure everybody has like one thought that they want to go over this week. I'll start because ref's law is unstoppable. I said it as a joke last year, and we saw that it was 90% accurate on the season. This year, so far, 87.1. And what we've seen over the last 2 weeks of UFL action is that ref's law knows no bounds. First, victim, Arlington Renegades. Did we not all think that they were going to win that game? It looked like they were going to pull it out. It was done, signed, sealed, delivered. And what happened? The Panthers came back from behind, won that game. Why? Ref's law. We rewind just the other day, just yesterday, that Roughnecks team kind of reminded me of a Houston Gamblers 2022 team where you're winning big, and then right at the last second, you lose the game. And they did it ref's law can only be the reason because they were playing like they hadn't played all season. And then for them to muff that punt return at the end, giving the Brahmas a shot to win, which they did. Ref's law. I mean, Jake, you're probably feeling pretty good about my stupid law.
Yeah, it's worked out in the Panthers' favor the last 4 out of 5 weeks. So I'll have to say I will give you that one win that we gave to the Brahmas thanks to refs law, but the other 4 up else to the playoffs this year. So yes, thank you.
And well, maybe you can give a couple back now that you clinched your spot. We'll see. We'll see. At least, you know what? Give me the last home game. It's a refs law guaranteed game anyway, but because it's against the Panthers. So anyway, all I know is at minimum, we're looking at 70% on the season, refs law. Could be higher. We'll see. James, any one thought you want to call out on the weekend?
Yeah, you know what? I guess for me, it's not necessarily about a team, but about a specific market and a specific.
I thought you were going to go about the airline. Sorry.
No, no, we could. But no, outside of my really crappy trip down to Birmingham, Birmingham itself was really an awesome experience. It's my first time there, which I've been trying to get there the last 3 seasons, just didn't really pan out. So to finally get there, to finally get the experience at Protective Stadium, to see the fans, we had 14,000 there at this past game. It was a really unique experience. I think being there makes me realize why the league loves Birmingham so much and why they see so much potential for this market. It was a really fun atmosphere. The fans showed up big time, down to the wire game. AJ McCarron's return. The storylines were perfect. Look, could attendance be better in Birmingham? Yes. But this was a good step in the right direction. And overall, Protective Stadium, man, I know, Ref, you've been there. I think, Luke, obviously, you've been there. I don't know, Jake, if you've been there yet before. But, I mean, it is a really, really great venue. And it's one that I hope sticks around in spring football.
Hell yeah. Jake, what do you got?
Do you have it queued up? You have the
that's right. We do have a clip, don't we? Is it
Yes,
queued
we
up?
do.
I don't know. Did we load it in here?
No.
Do you have the clip? Give it to me. Maybe Luke will go first.
It's in our chat. So yeah, here I'll tag you in it. But yeah, Luke, go ahead.
Well, I don't have the clip queued up, but mine is probably since we're going to keep the receipts, we'll keep the receipts going. But after the game, Anthony Becht had an interesting comment in his post-game press conference that there was AJ is used to playing in front of 100,000 fans at the University of Alabama, and this game there was only about 10 to 12,000 there, and they were mostly pulling for him anyway, and just everything about that statement is factually incorrect. And there was 14,000 people there. Thank you very much. We'll take every person that we can get. And secondly, the crowd was not cheering for AJ at all that I experienced. I don't know, James, you can maybe be more objective, but I mean, there was a small contingent. I mean, not small. I mean, I'll give St. Louis fans credit. There was a decent number of fans that traveled down, but in the grand scheme of things, it was a very small portion of the entire stadium. And they were loud at points for what they were, and were cheering for AJ. But other than that, I did not encounter anybody that, was like, well, I'm normally a Stallions fan, but I'm here to cheer for AJ, or, oh, I'm only here to cheer for AJ because I love Alabama so much. I mean, at the end of the game, the group of people I was around started a rather loud AJ sucks chant. So to say that, and honestly, you got to remember half of Alabama is Auburn fans who despised AJ long before this game. So, this narrative that's out there that people in Alabama just love AJ McCarron so much that they would betray the Stallions for him is totally just wrong. And I don't know why Beck wants to push that. I guess he was salty because his team got whipped. But
I was going to say he sounds. I won't say salty. I don't want to come off like that, but he does sound a little frustrated.
There, Ref,
I'm about to pull it up.
Pull it up so we can see if he's salty for himself.
Yeah. So let's salty for himself. I like that. So let's.
Well, he went mute.
You can't hear him?
No.
Oh. Well, I don't know. Does the audio not, you put me on the spot with this kind of clip thing here.
This is a good time to promote the State of the Stallions Twitter page. Go to State of the Stallions on Twitter and go to my tweets on May 12th, specifically at 1:31 p.m. and you can find the clip and watch it for yourself.
Yeah. Next week we'll have this more prepared. I don't know. There must be something to sharing the audio with the screen share, because we do have this other clip, but I'm assuming this one's not going to come through either. Probably don't hear audio.
Nope. I
Nope.
gave you the actual clip.
Oh, did you? All right. Well,
Yeah,
let me
I linked-
stop sharing. Where's All right, someone take over while I look for this clip. James, what do you got, or whoever?
Yeah, I don't know, James. You tell me what you think. Did you feel like you mostly heard people cheering for AJ McCarron?
No, definitely not. I mean, what I heard was, the Battlehawks fans travel great. I mean, they're probably the best traveling team in the league. So credit to them for coming out and making their presence known. And I think there were a few more fans that did show up because AJ was there at that game. But it was such clearly a Stallions crowd. I mean, I don't know how you could think anything else, because, I mean, every time the Stallions made a play, I mean, that crowd was erupting every single time. So, and AJ got a few cheers here and there. He made a couple of nice plays. I know he broke off that run in the first quarter, that nice scramble, and I heard some cheers. But again, those were from the Battlehawks fans that traveled, and there were still, I'd say, if there's 14,000 people there, I'd say a good 12,000 of them were Stallions fans, and then maybe you had a couple thousand Battlehawks / AJ McCarron fans to fill it out. So
I do have the clip loaded. So this is Jake's clip. So we're going to pull this up and then we'll comment on it. I think there's a couple things to comment on this one, but we'll just play the clip first.
But we had a scrimmage, and I'm not a big fan of the scrimmages, but we had a scrimmage this past week versus the Michigan team out of the USFL. And, Mike Nolan, good man, and his family have been in the NFL for a long time too. But they were in shock by how hard we play and how fast we play on defense. And we overwhelmed them. And it was an ass whooping contest in the scrimmage too. Scored twice on defense, had another takeaway. And I think we had 12 sacks and only had 39 plays and 12 sacks. So I don't think that they were very happy with how hard we were playing and how fast we play.
I'm going to say he sounds confident. He sounds confident. Now, I don't think one thing came across his mind in the scrimmage is maybe the Panthers aren't going to put their best plays up. Maybe he didn't think about that. Maybe the Panthers are going to lure us in with a false sense of hope into a game by letting us get X amount of sacks on them. I don't know, because that kind of feels like what might have happened, that they got a little bit out-coached strategy-wise there. Jake, what say you?
No, I think that Michigan was absolutely shocked by how hard and fast that DC played, and they just laid down right from the beginning of the game. No, I think that clearly the team took that bulletin board material to heart, because you had, especially Ryan Nelson just teeing off on it in social media posts, the one Panthers post with him, mentioning it. So yeah, I think they took that to heart, and like you said, it's exactly that. I don't think the Panthers were going to show much during the scrimmage. Probably gave some players that they were iffy on, a few snaps to see what what they can do. And I don't know. Greg being Greg must have taken that to heart, like let his ego get to the best of him, and I thank him for it. I think my opinion of him may have changed from hatred, being a DC fan last year, to one of great gratitude and appreciation this year. Well,
Ducky, you came in at the right time. You do have headphones in. No, this is great. So I'm assuming you saw the clip, and that's why we got you. You popped on so fast.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Did you? So, what were your thoughts on the DC Panthers game this weekend?
Ate his own words. I think it's funny. Just bulletin board material. You give it to people like that, and they're going to run with it, and they ran with it
for a tune of over 200 yards.
Yeah.
Oh boy. I mean, people every time I see it in the comments of this show, people call us biased. And if you go to the Discord, link down below, you'll see in my username, it says right there, XFL Superfan. That's all you need to know. But it ain't bragging if it's true. I mean,
I'm super biased, so the USFL conference is better.
Well, I mean, I have thoughts. On this, but I think let's move into the power rankings, because I think that the playoffs are much different than the regular season, right? And so we can't get ahead of ourselves. It is in St. Louis, and if St. Louis ends up there, we saw what happened with the Stallions. It was a close game. It wasn't like somebody dominated the other. So let's just pull up the power rankings. But I mean, naturally, after last week's performance, it is hard to say that the Stallions are not just the best team in the UFL. And this is coming from me. 12-0, all in, all of it. I got to say, the Stallions are arguably the best team in spring football history, at least modern spring football history. The record stands for itself, right? Well, I mean, 3 losses over 2.5 seasons, over 2.5 seasons, if that makes sense. Undefeated. I'm doing your whole pitch, Luke. You know the drill. Let me open it up to you. This is your time. This is your time to shine.
You know, I do first of all just want to say that there are plenty of St. Louis fans out there still who are very confident that we are not actually the best team, and that, you know, despite muffing a kickoff inside of our own 10, missing a field goal and some other mistakes that we made, and yet still winning, you know, wouldn't have won that game if X, Y, and Z had gone in their favor or whatever. So we're still not the unanimous best team, courtesy of all the Stallion or Battlehawks fans who are out there. But last time I checked, we haven't lost a game in over a year, a calendar year. The last time we lost a game was actually today in 2023. So that's 365 days without losing a game.
Who'd you lose that game to?
Well, that's irrelevant, but that team doesn't exist anymore, so we don't need to mention them on this show. But you know,
Luke, I gotta cut in really quick just because there's a little funny storyline here. As you had the USFL champions who haven't lost a game in 365 days, and the XFL champions who hadn't won a game in 365 days. So. Crazy. I just thought that was rather, or I guess give it 363, 364. Either way, the Renegades went pretty much a whole year without winning a football game.
Just shows you the talent gap between these two conferences, really.
Again, we'll get to that because I look at 1 and 2. It's still a close battle, right? Yes, the Stallions are on top. They beat the Battlehawks this weekend, but that was one of the greatest games we've been able to see in spring football. And we've had some good games this season. We had some great games the last few seasons. But this game, it really did come down to the last final minutes. And what I didn't want to see, at least, is I remember back last year with the Roughnecks and the Sea Dragons. There was so much hype going into that game. And what happened? The Roughnecks didn't do nothing. The Sea Dragons played an all right game, but it just didn't live up to its potential. This game lived up to its potential. I know, Ducky, you're going to hate to hear this,
probably,
but we should all hope that we get a rematch of this game in the championship. Jake, you actually are going to hate me more for saying that. But let's be honest, that was a great game. I want to see that storyline play out. But even to that point, the Stallions need to lose a game before the end of the season. I think it's going to be this upcoming week. Achilles heel.
That's my thing, though, is it's not even going to be a rematch because the Stallions didn't even really care about this game that much. They already clinched playoffs. They weren't even trying. And they still beat them. That's crazy. Now, just imagine if it's a championship game and they're actually trying to beat them. That's
a good point, Ducky.
It'll be a blowout.
Ducky, you're giving Luke propaganda here. Luke doesn't need any more propaganda.
The check cleared.
Ducky, he told me he drove all the way from Ohio down to Birmingham because he wanted to see the greatest show on turf, and they were wearing red. In that game on Saturday, and James too. Despite what Dave Smith tried to question my sources and say that James Larson might not be there. Well, I'm sorry to break it to you, Dave, but me and James were chilling on the sideline when you were wherever you were, not in Birmingham. So, I don't know. We all saw it with our own eyes what happened, and that was the Stallions cementing themselves as the number one team in this league, as if there was any question about that fact. But here we are. The haters will still find ways to question it.
Well,
so, go on.
One ranking that I think we had some debate over just in our PFN chat of like trying to figure out who to vote for is Michigan and San Antonio. You know, some people that think San Antonio should be ranked over Michigan because the Brahmas beat Michigan. I put the Panthers at 3 and the Brahmas at 4 simply because Michigan, for one, they've won 3 in a row. They've been playing really good football, and they've been consistent. San Antonio has been really hit or miss the last few weeks. Quentin Dormady he's looked terrible. Like, he has played really bad football these last few weeks. They got lucky that they played Arlington a couple weeks ago and got a win out of that. They got really lucky against Houston that ref's law was in play, because if not, the Roughnecks easily would have won that game. I mean, Quentin looked terrible. I think Kevin Hogan came in, and I think he takes the starting position next week because the Brahmas, they need some help. The offense is a shell of what it was with Chase Garbers, and DC has a lot of issues too, but if San Antonio can't figure out their offense, I almost feel like DC is a bigger threat in that XFL conference.
Granted, think DC gets in.
The Brahmas are basically locked in to make the playoffs now because the Defenders are 3 and 4, but I don't know. I'm just disappointed. Like, the Brahmas are 5 and 2, but they don't feel like it. Like, these wins have not been convincing at all.
No, not at all. And I mean, this game, yeah, they got the win over the Roughnecks, but if it wasn't the Roughnecks, they wouldn't have got that win, unless maybe it was the Showboats. Maybe.
Speaking of the Showboats.
Oh no, boats. So Jake, give me the analysis here. I didn't look at your power rankings per se, but do you feel comfortable with Michigan at number 3?
Yeah, that's what I had them. I think that not just because St. Louis lost on Saturday to the Stallions, but I feel like the gap might be closing. I mean, Panthers strung 3 in a row, which they hadn't even won 2 in a row since the beginning of last season. So I was definitely tempering some of my expectations with this Panthers team. Obviously, that down to the wire game versus Arlington didn't exactly help things, but they still managed 3 in a row. I think that if they're able to get Perkins involved a bit more, get him more comfortable in the offense. I mean, he's only been with the team for this is his 3rd week. So I honestly don't see why Panthers should not be considered a real threat. But right now, let's get them 4 in a row. Let's see them play a complete game. Because again, it was the defense that did most of the work and the run game, which granted, Colburn and Hills have looked great all season long, that duo, but definitely need more from the passing game to be able to have that there. Because if the Panthers do get past, to get past the Stallions, in order for them to do that, they're going to have a good passing game, because you're going to have to be able to be somewhat capable of doing a shootout with them, because you got Martinez on the flip side, on the opposite side. And then if we do happen to get past the Stallions in the USFL championship game, then, obviously Battlehawks, whoever we play, then going to have the firepower. So I still need to see a little bit more from the passing game. But at this point, I see no reason why they can't be considered a threat. Certainly, I'm not going to say they should be the favorite, but I think that they've shown enough these last few weeks, have gathered themselves to be a threat. So, yeah, I'm happy with 3. I definitely have them over San Antonio, which, since beating the Panthers, have not exactly looked like top 3 teams. So,
I mean, they've had
Panthers being a 3.
They've had problems with injury. Things happen. I mean, that's what happened with. It feels like every play in Houston, there's a player on the ground with some type of injury. It really, you don't like to see it, right? Ducky, I think you had the Panthers at number 2. Did I see that right?
Yeah, I had the Panthers at 2. The Brahmas at 3, and then the Battlehawks at 4.
Well, you put the Brahmas above the Battlehawks. Now, you know what? I'm not going to be mad at that.
I have reasons. You want to hear them?
Yeah.
Too bad. Battlehawks suck.
You know what? I can't argue with those reasons.
I'm going to be the realist here. I mean, I think St. Louis is still number 2, even though Michigan got the win against St. Louis in week 1. I think the Panthers, like Jake is saying, we got to see a little more consistency from the quarterback position when it comes to no injuries. I do think Perkins looked phenomenal. Brian Lewerke, they got the win, so I can't really knock his play, but I would be concerned if Brian continues to get more snaps moving forward, what that situation looks like. Also, Coach Nolan today in the media call said that Danny Etling is kind of a day-to-day, so there is hope that he comes back within a week or two, and he should definitely be back by the time the playoffs start.
You know what I can't argue with on this list is DC at number 5, because I can't put them below any of the teams at 6 through 8.
Nope.
And I can't put them above any of the teams at 1 and 4. We have the star of the show now. Can anybody else, does anybody have an argument for DC sitting anywhere else? I mean, they did. I thought that it was going to be
Where
a
else would they
more
go?
competitive game against the Panthers, and they didn't. Their magic bullet of their home territory is going by the wayside. They've now lost 2 games at home. Yeah, I don't think anybody can make the argument, but I had to check.
I mean, I agree with these rankings. I think if you were going to try to make the argument, you could say something like, if you really wanted to fade San Antonio because they've really been struggling so much the last few weeks, but
they're still 5-2. Like, there's just like,
yeah. I mean, it depends on how you think about
DC's
these.
looked bad and they've lost. At least San Antonio, they've won when they looked bad. So
sure.
Never mind. I won't say it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it just depends on, I think, your philosophy of power rankings. Are you sort of weighing more heavily like how the team looked in the last week or two, or are you kind of taking their full body of work? Because, I mean, DC did beat San Antonio very recently. So you could make the case that, well, yes, DC lost to Michigan pretty bad at home, but Michigan, we're saying, is better than San Antonio, and DC beat San Antonio, and San Antonio is getting worse and could barely beat a terrible Houston team. So anyway, all that to say, I think
DC has already been struggling, and now they might be without Jordan Ta'amu. So, I mean, I don't think things can get much better for them, if we're being honest.
No, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, okay? Rep asked, is there any argument to be made that they should be anywhere else?
There is no argument.
If you're going to make an argument, that's an argument that they would be at 4, but I think
we're arguing if grass isn't green.
Well, okay, let's just say
I know it's
Battlehawks fans want to argue if the Stallions aren't the best
but
team.
It's still green.
James, you're sounding. I'm trying to pretend to be a Battlehawks fan, okay? I'm going to argue that the Battlehawks should be number 1.
I'm flipping that.
Stallions.
Now, let's just say these were an RJ Young power ranking. Could we see DC at like 3?
Probably 2.
I'd see Ohio State at number 1.
Anyway, so we have 3 teams in the bottom.
They all look right to me.
Look right to me.
Probably 1 and 6. I will say, if there's one spot the Defenders could go, it would be place number 6. Arlington could be 5 if they just won a couple more of these games.
James is discriminating against the great people from our.
Yeah, that guys. Capital. If you win games, you go up on the power rankings. Per James Larson.
I mean, I'm kind of with James
that's a
here.
Breaking story right there.
I'm kind of with
I'm
James
being serious. Like, Arlington's offenses look better than some of these other teams. Their defense is garbage, especially in crunch time.
So here's where it broke down for me, because in theory, Houston should be above Arlington because Houston beat Arlington. Where it came down to me, putting Arlington at 6 and Houston at 7 was just this. Houston, no matter what team, how bad they are, would never throw up the amount of points that Arlington did this week. And we'll see that, I guess, in the last game of the season against the Showboats, because that's their shot. Although I will say this, trap game, and it might be coming this weekend against your Birmingham Stallions, who've clinched they've clinched the playoff, not the championship. They've gotten past the hurdle of the Battlehawks. They're due for a loss. I know Skip Holtz, he'll never say it, but in the back of his head, he knows we need to take a loss before we head into the playoffs. And why not do it to a familiar opponent where you're used to losing at least once a year at this point? And you know what? Throw us a bone. It's like a mercy win, like why do I talk about this is what happens when you grow up as a Lions fan. I started the season 12-0 right now. I'm like,
and you became a spring football fan because you saw the Roughnecks were 5-0. You guys had a good thing going, and now this is what you're left with. So that is unfortunate. You know what else is unfortunate? Let's we need a moment of silence for the Memphis Showboats defense, giving up 101 rushing yards to Davion Smith in 2024. How does that happen? Like, that was the most mind-boggling stat line of the whole weekend for me, I think. I just don't understand it. I think Smith was averaging less than 3 yards a carry heading into this game. And Memphis allows over 100 yards to probably the most washed-up running back in this league.
Oh, God.
I've never seen anything quite like that. And,
Holy crap.
good for Smith, man. He had a career day. I'm happy for him. And, if he retires after the season, at least he got one more 100-yard game in, courtesy of Carnell Lake.
I mean, the show, they are the oh no boats. They really are. Oh no, what have you done? I feel bad for that fan base because they are still like rabid. They will show up to those games. They love their team. And it's like, oh man, I thought it was bad when it was Todd Haley twerking out there.
Maybe that's what they're missing.
That's what I said. That's what I told Flip. Dude, James, somebody send Flip a note. Just a little bit, just a little twerk. Throw a little magic in it.
You have to win a game first, though. That was the
that's what's gonna let them. That's gonna let the magic loose. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure we know what you mean.
Well, this is a BBL, right? Big Beautiful League that we're talking about here. So, anyway.
Something like that.
Anyway,
Christian.
I know what happened. Switzerland. We start off the season. You're talking Switzerland. All of a sudden we find the wallpapers start coming out.
Hey, when he was in Birmingham, we radicalized him.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
You spend one day with me, and it's nuts.
You guys
end
don't
up
want to
staying
know
with
what
your cousin in
happened
Birmingham?
After that Frontier Airlines flight, man. You don't want to know what happened to me down in Birmingham.
Ref, what'd you say?
Well, I know James skipped over that one, didn't he? I was going to say, didn't you stay with your cousin while you were in Alabama?
I did, yeah.
You skipped over that. Anyway.
Yeehaw.
That's wild.
Next thing, we're going to be at James' wedding.
I think that's a perfect segue into our guest who just arrived here. The man, the myth, the legend, Pittsburgh Maulers defensive coordinator, assistant coach of the year in 2023, Jarren Horton is joining the show. Jarren, how you doing today, man?
Doing great. How y'all doing?
Doing good. We're glad to have you join us. We really appreciate it. Hey, I mean, we got a lot to talk about. We've got 3 1-6 teams here in the UFL. Some teams that, we had high expectations for coming into the season, and they've really underwhelmed. And Matt, what are your thoughts on what you've seen from the UFL so far this year and a couple of these teams that just haven't really performed at a high level?
Yeah, I mean, the league as a whole is great, obviously. But it is a little unfortunate that some teams have struggled as they have. Like you said, 3 1-6 teams where the USFL conference is already locked up the playoff race at this point. It's a little unfortunate. I know that both of those teams, Houston and Memphis, man, they got some talent. They got some players that can do some things that they've shown this year and previous years in the USFL and the XFL, whatever league they've been in. It is a little disappointing, but I mean, sometimes that's how the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, that's how it's crumbled this year. Where, like you said, 3 teams eliminated. DC, a team that made it to the championship in the XFL, they're on the brink of elimination. So kind of a shakeup here. But we're looking ahead. We're looking ahead and to see what changes could possibly happen down the road. And I know we talked a little bit about expansion and some things that could come on in the 2025 season. Man, somehow you were without a job this year, which I think all of us here could agree. It's hard to believe after what you accomplished last year with Pittsburgh. I mean, you just take us through, what you were able to do with the Maulers last year. I know I put out a tweet about it yesterday, just first place in basically every defensive category and then a couple second place. Like, I mean, you guys were top of the charts across the board.
Yeah. We led every meaningful category on the defensive side of the ball last year. We were second in rushing defense by 13 total yards on the season, which was unfortunate because that last Week 10 game against New Jersey, at the end of the game, they had a drive where they got like 25 rushing yards on DeAndre Johnson scrambles, and that's what put us in second for rushing yards. But yeah, we led in total points, pass yards, total defense, interceptions, fumbles, scoring percent, just everything on defense. And I mean, we played well all year on defense. It took a little bit for us to kind of mesh as a team, but we got there, and obviously we made it to the championship game. The North Division championship was a hell of a game against Michigan, and then the championship of the USFL against Birmingham was another good game. It was one play away from being 21-19, I think, at the start of the fourth quarter. So if that would have happened, that would have been great.
No doubt. I mean, that one came down to the wire, and yeah, you had that touchdown called back, and then don't get points out of it. But Jarren, for you haven't earned that assistant coach of the year last year. What did that mean to you, and what was some of the culture that you instilled there in Pittsburgh for the defense to be so successful?
Yeah, I mean, the award meant a lot because it was voted on by other teams. It was voted on by the other 7 USFL teams and coaches and stuff like that. We voted for players as well as the coach of the year and assistant coach of the year. So coming from my peers, it meant a lot that they respected me to vote for me for that. But as far as the culture, I think a lot of it goes back to 2022 with what Kirby Wilson started. And I know we didn't win many games. We only won one in 2022, but we instilled that culture of what we wanted the team to be, and it started to pay off last year. And I wish we would have been around this year because it definitely would have paid off even more. We would have been a very successful team in this league this year.
When you look at the 3 teams that are 1-6, I mean, me personally, and I won't go into details on which ones. I look at some of them where there's some issues with injury, right? And that's going to get you anywhere you go, and you can't control that. But it seems like fundamentally there are some coaching issues happening at some of these teams. If you were to pick up one of these 3 teams, which one do you think you'd have like the most success with? Just looking at what they have now, right? Because you mentioned Houston. Houston has some dogs on that team.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, I think some of them are just being misused. I see it at the game up close, right? But I'm just curious from your perspective, because you're watching all these games and you're looking at it a little bit differently. We all saw you in the booth last year, but it's kind of different watching on the couch, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. I mean, I can't speak as much on Arlington. I don't know them. I haven't seen as many of their games, and I don't know as many players on their team. I think Ajane Harris is a corner there, I believe in, and that's the only guy that I've been with, I believe. Houston obviously has Ruben and Olive, who's hurt now, and they cut Isaiah, which makes no sense to me. I'm not going to say too much on that because that's wild. And then Memphis has Troy and Terry Poole, who is a player that can play at a high level and isn't playing for them. So I don't know. I think that as far as what team I could go to, I don't know. I mean, I personally believe that I'll be successful wherever I go. But I think all those teams have pieces, and sometimes it's just things don't fall the right way. Like, especially with Arlington, they've played some good football, and they just haven't found ways to win games. And that happens. Like, sometimes your team doesn't know how to win yet. And once you get over that hump, it's like, oh, okay, this is how we win. And a team that does a really good job at that is Birmingham. They always find a way to win. And it's like they're 7-0 right now. And some teams find a way to win. Some teams find a way to lose. And I think when you figure out, okay, this is how we got to finish out games, and it's not like a certain thing that you can just say, we have to do X, Y, and Z to get the results. It kind of just, things fall into place, and guys kind of trust each other, and they trust the trust the coaching and trust what they're being told to do, and the results will work themselves out.
No, absolutely. I think Luke, you had a question teed up.
Yeah, Jarren, if I could kind of monopolize your time here for a second for my own purposes, I'm working on an article about Chiavezzino, and the Stallions obviously have been a very successful team this season and previous seasons, but this year going into the season, one of the things that a lot of people were talking about the Stallions was how good their linebacker group was. But here we are, 7 weeks into the season, and that's actually become one of kind of the biggest question marks for them. It's become a really thin area just because of injuries and some guys moving on to other opportunities and things like that. But the guy that sort of, really been the most stable presence for them and had the game-winning play this past week was a guy that you are very familiar with, who was sort of right there, neck and neck for Defensive Player of the Year in the USFL last year in Chiavezzino. Could you maybe just talk a little bit about your time coaching him, the kind of player he is, and then what you've seen out of him this year with the Stallions?
Yeah. No disrespect at all to Frank Ginda. I think he's a hell of a player, but I think Tez should have been the Defensive Player of the Year last year in the USFL. Like I said, no disrespect to Frank. He's a hell of a player. But I'm going to ride for my guys, and I talk to Tez every week, and he this year to me is a Defensive Player of the Year. I know there's some other guys that are definitely up there and have the argument to be in that, but to me, Tez is the Defensive Player of the Year. I think my experience with him, for being with him for 2 years, is the first year you saw the talent and you saw the potential, I guess. But the shift from year 1 to year 2 with Tez was really big. And a lot of it was him being a little bit more comfortable in the system, being able to get checks and communicate better. But even in Birmingham, the first couple of weeks before Scooby went down, he was rotating and wasn't playing that much. And I think, like I said, I think he's one of the best defensive players in the league. And I'm glad that I'm not glad that Scooby got hurt, obviously. I love Scooby, and I know Scooby personally as well. But I'm glad that Tez is getting a chance to shine now and show what he can do, because he deserves it. I think he deserves to be the Defensive Player of the Year if he maintains what he's doing. And I mean, right now they got to be the favorite to win the championship. They just beat St. Louis in a really good game, and if that ends up being the championship game, I think we're in for a hell of a championship game in about a month or so.
Absolutely.
No doubt. And Jarren, to maybe circle back to a couple of these teams that have struggled this year, I don't know how much you've watched of I know you said the Renegades you're not as familiar with. I don't know how much you've watched of Houston and Memphis, but some of these defenses, I mean, the Renegades, they've lost a lot of close games simply because they haven't been able to get a stop. The Showboats are giving up like 37 points a game across these last few losses. What are some of the things that you would do to instill, I guess, in practices and with your defense to make sure those sorts of things don't happen?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing for me, I've been in spring leagues for 3 seasons, and it's finding what your guys can do and finding what they do well. Because every defense, you're going to have all of your base coverages. Like, every defense is going to have man-to-man, cover 1. They're going to have a form of cover 2, cover 3, cover 4, cover 6. Like, you're going to have all of your base coverages, and then really the biggest variety is either the front, if you're going to run a 3-4 or a 4-3, or if you're going to be a pressure team or a zone team. And in 2022, we were one of probably the teams that pressured the most in the USFL. Like, we pressured a lot. But then last year, I don't know, but I'm almost positive we were the team that pressured the least. Just because our guys were really comfortable in playing Tampa and playing cover 6. And and we could stop the run by playing cover 6 and too high concepts. So like, it's just finding what your guys are comfortable with. And like Memphis, Carnell and I come from the same system. We come from the Pittsburgh Steelers 3-4 Dick LeBeau system. So like our verbiage is the same. His is a little different, but it's the same defense with a little bit of variation. So like, it's not necessarily scheme. It's just what are your guys going to do well, and how do you put them in position to succeed? And at the same point, like, I'll tell the players, like, I can get you to the spot, but I can't make you make the play. Like, I can get you to be in the gap, and okay, you got to make the tackle. I can't make the tackle for you. That's on you. You make the tackle. So, I mean, as long as you're getting the guys to the spot, then it's on them. Then they got to let their God-given talent come through.
100%. And I kind of want to open this up, the discussion, to the whole panel here, and just the idea of coaching in general in spring football, where we have some big names in the league right now, obviously, like Wade Phillips, Bob Stoops, Skip Holtz, obviously, has made a name for himself really in this spring scene. But I feel like we're seeing a lot of younger guys on the come up. You know, Jarren, last year, obviously, you won Assistant Coach of the Year. It's kind of crazy you're not in the league this year. But across the board, Jake, your Panthers, you've got a couple young guys there like Colin Bauer, who's done an excellent job of the defense, Jordan Pavlison, Christian Runza. I'd love to get people's thoughts on, can spring football become more of a platform for some of these up-and-coming coaches? I feel like that's what it needs because, yes, it's important to have those established coaches. It's good for engagement. It's good for validity for the league. But at the same time, it's a league of opportunity, and I feel like some of these younger guys should be getting some more opportunities.
I mean, you said it right there, James. I've always been one of the idea that this isn't all just about opportunities for players. It's opportunities for coaches, water boy, camera people, field people, like everybody across the gauntlet, right? And like, to me, that's what I want to see. I would much rather see all young coaches than a Wade Phillips. I mean, AJ Smith is a great example. Jarren, you, the last couple of years, and that was one of the things, I know I've said it in the past, but that was one of the things I was looking forward to the most this season, is you taking on AJ Smith's team, depending you were on different teams, of watching you on defense in the booth, watching AJ Smith on the offense. To me, that was the marquee matchup. And unfortunately, we didn't get next year. Hopefully we do. But I don't know. That's my take. I want to see all the young guys come in here, get an opportunity, and show what they can do. Look at all the things that we've seen with the USFL last year. Zach Potter, I mean, Luke, you'll say it first and foremost, but I mean, I knew he was young, but when I met him last year face to face, I was like, oh my God, you're a child. But he built arguably one of the greatest teams in spring football, with some help and things like that, right? But I don't know. That's just my take.
Yeah, no, I think if I could just jump in real quick on that. I mean, I do think the nice thing about spring football, which I think what you guys are getting at, is there's a little bit more bandwidth to take a risk, right? Like if you're an NFL owner or an NFL team, you don't necessarily want to take a risk on a 20-year-old general manager because you're like, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to get crucified in the media, But in a spring football league, you can kind of take that risk. Like, hey, I see that this guy has that potential. And yeah, maybe he's younger. Maybe he doesn't have the same name that some other, maybe GMs on the tail end of their career are in. But why not give him a shot? And he's willing to grind and do what it takes to prove that he can be the best general manager in this league. Like, let's give him that shot. And Skip Holtz took that chance on Zach Potter, and like, look how it's paid off for him. So in the same way that I think these leagues can be a landing place, not only for, maybe not just football players that are sort of trying to play out their days, but younger guys that haven't gotten that opportunity in the NFL and been overlooked. I think you get that same sort of opportunity for potentially coaches, general managers, staff, and anybody that sort of needs that one shot. This should be a place where they can get it.
Yeah, I think with spring football, there's a couple different approaches you can take. You can take get the best available talent, and I think you have to have that a part of that anyway. But what I agree with and what the leagues have seemed to really try to promote is that they want to give these guys the opportunity to get back. And yeah, I think that really needs to play in with some of the staffers, with some coaches. Like, it's great having some big names, but clearly, half of the bigger names or some of the older guys that have been around longer are the ones that aren't necessarily doing the greatest. So, I think people would rather see parity rather than just the big names, because who cares if a Bob Stoops led team goes 1-9 versus a Jarren Horton led team that's going 7-3? I think people would rather see the 7-3 team rather than, oh, hey, Bob Stoops is on the sideline. Like, that's, I'd rather see the
I
best.
think with that is the first year, I think it's important to have Bob Stoops and Wade Phillips and have big name guys, because that's going to give validity to the league, and it's going to allow fans to be like, oh, I know Bob Stoops, I know Wade Phillips, I know this guy, that guy. But now that we're in really year 3, year 4, however you want to say it, I mean, give opportunities to the guys that have proved themselves in this league. Because spring football is a different animal than college football. It's a different animal than the NFL. And you can ask any of these coaches that have been strictly in the NFL and then come to this league, it's a learning curve. It takes some time to be like, okay, this isn't the NFL. I can't do as much. I can't treat this the same as the NFL because, one, I don't have a full offseason. I don't have rookie minicamp. I don't have mandatory minicamp. I don't have OTAs. I don't have a training camp and then off-season program. I have a month of training camp and then we're playing a game. So I think that's a big part of it too, is some people that have experience in a spring league, it's a different animal. It's a different beast, and I think that counts for a lot.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I guess my take is like you said, I think it's important to have those coaches as you start up a league. But moving forward, it's do we need a Bob Stoops with a 1-6 or a team that's 1-6 right now? And I guess my take on it too is someone like Bob Stoops even going to stick around heading into the next couple of years? Because that's a guy, he's got so much money sitting in the bank. He obviously doesn't need the UFL to stay afloat financially. I think he's doing it more for the love of the game, and it's something that he can do for a few months a year. But at some point, he just got his 200th career win. His team has not executed well this year, and I don't know. It feels like he's the type of guy that would probably eventually move on. But at the same time, there are going to be openings, because it certainly seems like expansion would be on the table for 2025. And if somehow it's not, down the road there will be expansion. So I guess, guys, any closing thoughts on what we could potentially see down the road with that, and why should we see Jarren get in the league?
Because we want to see a winning team. Well, I need a new team to root for. I'll be honest, man. I got beaten up this year.
Dude, that was my biggest disappointment.
Hey, when I get my team next year, if it's the Maulers, if it's whoever, I don't want anybody to lose their job. So I hope they expand and allow me to interview for one of these expansion teams. But I mean, shoot, we're gonna put on for the Discord and we're gonna put on for PFN. But yeah, I mean, I'm hoping to hear some good news coming in the next couple weeks and months and expansion, and hope someone contacts me for an interview, and we'll see what happens. But I hope the league does expand, and we'll look forward to an eventful 2025.
Let me branch off of that real quick. If they expand, is there any cities that you have your eye on that you'd like to coach in?
Not in particular. I mean, I've heard rumors of some cities, and I mean, of the teams that I would imagine that they would bring back teams that were folded, and obviously the Maulers would be number one for me. But wherever there's an opening, I'm willing to go. I got connections to a lot of cities. Being a coach's son, I've lived in a lot of different cities in my life. So whether it be on the West Coast, I live in Phoenix now. So if it's Arizona, if it's Portland, if it's LA,
he wants Seattle so bad.
Oh, Seattle would be great. Yeah, wherever. I mean, wherever it would be.
Seattle Maulers.
I'm down. Yeah, Seattle Maulers. I mean, Seattle Sea Dragons. Whatever it is, I'm cool with that.
Man, you could get out there at Seattle and go get Ben DiNucci, because I know he's been talking about going back and playing for the Sea Dragons if they come back. I saw him put out a tweet. He wants to buy the team.
Yeah,
but I still can't believe.
I think that's the exciting thing, though, is we're seeing some of these names and seeing people really come behind spring football. Anyone that's experienced it is like, all right, this can work. This is pretty awesome. So, like you said, Jarren, hopefully we see expansion sooner than later. And, it was unfortunate we went from 16 to 8, but that's where we're at. And I guess the goal ahead is, get through season 1, get through season 2, get through season 3, and then hopefully season 10, 20, and 30 we'll be talking about when we all have gray hair.
Yeah.
Any parting thoughts from anybody before we wrap up this segment?
I just want Jarren in the new league, but I also he needs to be on the opposite side. So maybe face 2 times at most, second time being in the championship. Other than that, any other team is good for me.
Oh yeah. Didn't he sweep the Panthers like 3-0 last year?
Yeah, we're not talking about that.
Oh. I don't know. I thought I saw some of those games.
No, that's just a hypothetical.
Right, they're playing great. Shout out to Bryce and shout out to Keith. They're playing great.
Ballers, legends forever. Well, hey, Jarren, we really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you for all your input and insight, and hopefully we'll have you back on the show at some point, and hopefully it's back on the show with head coach Jarren Horton in the UFL.
That. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Take it easy. That was fun.
It's always a blast having, these spring football guys, man. This is why we love it. I mean, these guys are just so down to earth. And they do it for the love of the game. You can tell Jarren has such a passion for, he wants to be in spring football. And that, to me, is why I think he should absolutely be in the conversation for getting into the league in 2025. And I've had conversations with him, right? His goal has always been to be a head coach in spring football. How many other people do you know out there that would have that goal to be a head coach in a spring football league? There's not many of them. And his passion, his drive to be great. And, what he did with Pittsburgh alone last year should be a resume that gets him a job. So hopefully we'll see that happen. We'll see what happens in 2025. As it stands right now, they're definitely heading in the direction of expansion. So we'll see how it plays out. Nothing official. I don't want people to quote me and be like, hey, Larson said this, Larson
fake
said
news.
that.
Well, at least you're not national, so nobody will hear about it.
Oh, yeah.
James is already spreading fake news by saying that there were multiple thousand battle.
No, I saw Stevie. Stevie, if you're still watching, listen, what I said was that there was probably a couple thousand people there between the Battlehawks fans that traveled and also other Alabama football fans that came out to see AJ and watch the Stallions too. I wasn't saying they were Battlehawks fans. I was just saying the AJ narrative definitely helped get some extra people there.
The Anthony Beck check cleared, James.
Hey,
James.
Beck, a few weeks ago, I think it was in San Antonio after they beat the Brahmas. As he was walking up the podium, he was like, "James, get those power rankings up." So, I mean, what do you know? St. Louis is number 2 now. So I think I did my job.
Yeah, that's what I like to see. Well, that one was quick. Oh, man. I missed that one, whatever it was, but sign them up. What a fun week. And now we're heading into week 8. I know I'm going to talk about this a little bit not a little bit, probably a lot. We'll do a speculation zone. But I know we're probably not going to go into this in detail, but news did pop up that we might see some UFL games on a Friday. I'm still not necessarily convinced. But James, the only reason I bring it up is because of your quote tweet. And I think that is probably the best point to make out of this is if, and again, this is a big if, there is expansion. Well, they got to play those games somewhere. And I think what we're all thinking in the back of our heads, maybe not all of us, but the crazies at least are thinking, well, I hope this doesn't result in more regional broadcasting games. And if we get games on Friday night, I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the Friday night game. I get it. It's fine. But you know what? At the same time, okay, yeah, it makes sense if you have to expand. I'm going to go into this in way more detail on Friday on the UFL podcast with my buddy Zach. But does anybody have any thoughts on that before we
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah. If I could just ask a question, James, I don't know, you might be able to clarify this, but I was confused I didn't get to really fully read the article. So I was a little confused. Was what was being shared, was it saying that they were going to kind of replay UFL broadcasts in the fall on Friday, or that they were actually going to have games in the fall and next spring?
That article is so unclear, and that's kind of why I tried to word things in my tweet so that it was kind of more hypothetical than anything, because they're talking about filling, it says 2024 fall schedule, it's talking about whatever. It's so in my mind, originally, it's like, well, they're probably talking about just rerunning UFL games during that slot, which they might do. But I do think that Friday night would probably have to be in discussions for the UFL season next year if they're looking for time to fill, and if we do have expansion, and let's say we do have 5 games a week, then you might want to stick something on Friday night because you no longer have SmackDown. So that's a big hole to fill. So it makes sense to stick. I mean, you'd think that they're planning ahead for the years ahead and not just a few months. So we'll see. I'd like to 100% say that, look, we don't have full clarity on this, but it's a possibility. Ref, you probably.
So this isn't necessarily 100% clarification, but I did do a little bit of digging to try to find, the Fox side of here is our fall lineup. And so this is my take, right? And they're basically doing a little bit of self-promotion by calling out the UFL, but really what they're calling out is they're making other changes to their schedule as well. But the big one here is SmackDown's going away. That's going to move to USA Network. Raw's moving to Netflix, which is kind of crazy in its own right. And so they're calling out that college football, they're going to air college football on Friday in the fall, but they didn't want to waste the opportunity to talk about football without bringing up the UFL. And so essentially they're saying this Friday night spot is essentially going to become a sports-centric spot for Fox. So college in the fall, UFL in the spring, and then whatever else they want to mix in. I mean, even with the NFL, who's to say when we get games coming up? Because we have Wednesday game, I think, with Christmas now, right? And again, that's not 100% guarantee that this is what we're gonna see, but that's what I read into it.
No, that's a good point. And I think you're right on that aspect where they have to be thinking about it. Like, it has to be on the table of like, okay, what else is going on in the spring that we could put on a Friday night? There's not a lot. I mean, it's not like it's not like they have the NBA. So they're going to need something to put there. Why not put their own product? And again, if you're expanding and if you have 5 games a week or even 6, then that makes perfect sense, sticking on a slot there. And look, I mean, I know some of us are recalling the Friday night game of the 2022 USFL, Michigan, New Jersey. I think it was the final score 10-6. Ugliest game I've seen in a hot minute. I don't think the ratings were too hot on that one, but it's something that they could build up. Like, I mean, I think they're pretty satisfied with how the ratings have looked. And even if the ratings aren't perfect, I mean, if you can get several 100,000 a night on Friday Night Football, I mean, that's got to be pretty comparable to what else that they would have on a Friday night in the spring.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if that actually happens. I don't know if anyone else has thoughts on this, but like I said, I know Zach and I will jump into the speculation zone this Friday, so tune in. Cool. I'll take it. Any other thoughts on just the show before we ride into the sunset and I do my spiel at the end?
Nope. I can tell everybody why I was late, though.
Why were you late?
I got pulled over.
Oh, nice. What did you do?
I saw a St. Louis fan attacking somebody on the street, so I had to speed to go save that person. And
glad you stood up to him.
So after you got pulled over, the cop and you went over and saved the person, right?
Yeah.
All the cop had to see was the USFL hoodie. He said, "Oh, he's one of the good guys."
Yeah. That's St. Louis fan. Ouch! Uppa. He's killing me.
Well, we know the secret St. Louis fan in the show. You know what? I almost forgot to do points. Let's do some points here. So, I'm going to start with Zach. Zach missed the show today, but I'm going to give him 5 points for missing the show, for taking a week off, because, I don't know, it feels like that's a good number.
Work-life balance.
Yeah, work-life balance. You need a little bit in your life. Luke, I'm going to give you 7 points for the number of wins that the Stallions have.
I like that.
So we'll start there. Jake, you know what? I'm going to give you, how many wins does your team have? 5?
5.
5? I'm going to give you 7 wins just because you clinched your playoff spot. I'll give you 2 extra wins.
Giving you
for
7
that.
Wins.
Let's go here. Boom. All right. James, I mean, the airlines got you. The rental people got you. I think that's worth at least, 12 points.
I spent so much freaking money on this trip.
I think I should get 8 for what place St. Louis is going to be next week.
You know what? I'm not going to argue with you. 8 points there. And let's see. We're 1-6. So I'm just going to give myself 5 points.
Yeah, that's one quick comment I have about St. Louis is AJ McCarron got hurt at the end of that game. So right now he's day to day. I mean, that could really shake things up there in that conference if they lose a couple games with the backup.
It can muck some things up. And this is why you got to stay tuned every Monday on Around the UFL and every Friday on the UFL podcast to get the skinny. And make sure you're checking out pfnewsroom.com daily. And make sure you're following all these lovely faces here, because between James, Luke, Jake, and Ducky, I mean, you had a viral tweet this weekend that we won't talk about. But you'll get something. Go on.
Do we want to close the show on just a little bit of a bang? Because I did get that clip of Beck loaded in. If we do want to recircle that, because Ducky, I don't think you saw this one. You might have some comments since you were at this game. By the way.
Actually, that's a good idea. Ducky was at the game. So, Ducky, let's get your opinion on if you think this is a fair and accurate assessment of what took place on Saturday.
And James, you'll have to run the clip because I have to refresh the page to get it, and I don't know if that's going to kick
perfect.
us off.
All right.
Yep.
Well, we'll roll it right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's been doing it his whole life. He played in front of 100,000+ fans. I mean, to deal with 10 or 12, most of them were cheering for him. That's good, so.
What? Nobody was cheering for AJ. Literally, the whole entire time, people were chanting like AJ sucks, all of that. It was, I don't know. I don't know what he's smoking. I would drug test him.
He ain't smoking that Stallions pack, I'll tell you that.
Also, there was actually 14,000 people there. I don't know about the DC game. Somebody said there's 12,000, but
yeah, I don't know.
I'm not going to get in the ins and outs on the numbers and the
All
this
I
and
gotta
that,
say
but
is-
I will say it did look a little bit different. I don't know.
The math ain't mathing. Okay, that's all I'm saying.
No.
Speaking of DC, I thought it was pretty funny that the Battlehawks, after shellacking the Defenders a couple weeks ago, it's like a week 5 win, and they were smoking cigars in the locker room. I don't know if I've ever seen a team bring out the cigars for a regular season game like that before.
To give them credit.
That was their first loss on the home field.
Well, that they had never.
I know
the
it was a big
DC
game.
Defenders. I
Thought
get
it was
it.
hilarious though.
It is funny.
That was such a meaningful game that they brought them out in week 5. That's the earliest I've ever seen the victory cigars.
Well, when you're an XFL team, you don't really have much to look forward to in the championship.
I mean, the championship will be played at St. Louis, though.
I know.
We'll even be in it.
It's going to be. I am looking forward to that game. I am looking forward to seeing who makes it, because I won't say that the Stallions are going to make it. The Panthers, if anyone's going to beat them in the USFL conference, it's the Panthers. And the XFL conference, I mean, as you mentioned, James, if AJ McCarron, if there's an injury that lingers, that changes things. I mean, who knows who gets into the championship from the XFL side. And maybe we see another shocker. I don't know. With last year with Arlington, 4-6 record, they won the championship. Who's to say? Who's to say? Anyway, any other thoughts?
I think that about wraps it up. I think Anthony Beck might have been a little. I think he might have been looking at the stands too much instead of looking at the field. I don't know.
Ooh, the cherry on top. I'll take it. So here's the deal, guys. Here's what you need to do. Make sure you subscribe, click the bell. It builds morale. It also lets you know when we're live, just like every Monday right now on Around the UFL, where we'll be back next week talking about the power rankings. We'll be talking about all the latest news. And I think we have another guest in store, unless we kick him off for a third week in a row.
Dude, we are not doing it 3 weeks in a row.
Anyway, stay tuned. It's going to be a big name. You're not going to want to miss it. Make sure you're following everybody involved. I think that's it. So yeah, until next time, guys, sign you up.
Arlington still sucks.